Good to be with you again for the fourth in this week's series of daily devotionals on the topic of Jesus' resurrection. Stuart Holman here. These daily devotionals are designed to sit alongside the Growing Disciples Bible reading plan, where for the month of October we have been focusing on the death and the resurrection of Jesus. So far in our deep dive into the account of Jesus' resurrection, we've focused in on Luke's Gospel and his account of that first day after Jesus' resurrection. John's Gospel similarly provides an account of that first day, particularly Jesus' meeting with his disciples in the evening. But it turns out that one of the apostles was not there for some reason. We are picking up the text at John 20, verse 24. Now Thomas, also known as Didymus, one of the 12, was not with the disciples when Jesus came. Thomas's nickname today is Doubting, as in Doubting Thomas, but his original nickname was Didymus, which means the twin. Now, if Thomas had a twin brother, we don't know who he was. We don't know if Thomas's twin brother also had the nickname the twin. We do, though, know a fair bit about Thomas and his character as we read all of John's Gospel. He turns out throughout the Gospel to be quite the pragmatist. He's portrayed as hard-headed, practical, and honest. At the Last Supper, Jesus tells his disciples that he's going to his Father to prepare a place for them, and then he concludes by saying, "And you know the way to the place where I am going." But Thomas wasn't going to pretend that he knew something he didn't. And so he says, "Lord, we don't know where you're going, so how can we know the way?" It's as if he's saying, "Jesus, can you just give it to us straight and clear, please?" Even before the Last Supper, when Jesus said to his disciples that he was committed to going up to Jerusalem into the heart of Jewish opposition, Thomas grasps what's going on, and so he says to the rest of the disciples, "Let's go too, so that we may die with him." So he thought it through. If Jesus went to Jerusalem, he'd probably end up dead. He also figured that if Jesus was going to be killed, there was a good chance that his disciples would be too. And so he was preparing himself for that possibility. So Thomas was a realist, a practical, don't beat around the bush kind of guy. And that's why he is a very good man to see interacting with the resurrected Jesus. Since Thomas missed out on the meal with Jesus on that first Sunday night, the others tell him about it in verse 25. "We have seen the Lord." Thomas famously replies, "Unless I see the nail marks in his hands and put my finger where the nails were and put my hands into his side, I will not believe." Now, aren't you grateful for Thomas? At least I am. If a man has come back from the dead, I want it checked out thoroughly. In the same way that a jury in a criminal case must be given evidence in order to develop a reasoned belief about what actually took place, so also with the resurrection of Jesus. From our place and time, we can do no better than have a properly warranted belief in Jesus' resurrection. We depend on reliable and credible witnesses, on verified evidence. And we see if their testimony is congruent with all the facts that we have. This is why Thomas is so important. This is a man who wants reasonable doubt removed. And so Thomas stands his ground for a week. Verse 26. A week later, his disciples were in the house again, and Thomas was with them. Though the doors were locked, Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." Then he said to Thomas, "Put your finger here. See my hands. Reach out your hand and put it into my side." So on behalf of cynics and pragmatists down through the millennia, Thomas got the physical evidence he demanded. Jesus himself says, "Stop doubting and believe. Now, whether he did examine Jesus' body closely, whether he did have a poke around in Jesus' side or not, Thomas does have the courage to change. He sees the evidence and forms a reasoned belief. He responds, "My Lord and my God." He's changed from doubting Thomas to believing Thomas. And Thomas's belief is a fully Christian belief. His simple statement shows us what being a Christian is all about. He already believed a lot of other things, good things, about Jesus. He just spent the last 3 years with Jesus, hearing him teach, observing the miracles. He even had to pick up the scraps every time Jesus fed the crowd with loaves and fishes, right? So Jesus, a good man? Yes. Jesus, a worker of miracles? Yes. Jesus, a prophet and teacher? Sure. But now Thomas moves to a genuinely Christian belief. You are my Lord and my God. I'm guessing that most of us in the Growing Disciples program and using these daily devotionals are already convinced Christians. And yet for us, Thomas's confession still brings with it a powerful challenge. Thomas's confession affirms that Jesus is both Lord and God, his God and his Lord. What kind of a God would he be if he didn't exercise his authority? When Thomas calls Jesus his Lord, he's really saying, you're the boss. You're the one with personal authority over me. You are the one who shapes my hopes and my values and my direction in life. Jesus is Lord means Jesus is in charge. More than some kind of abstract authority like submitting to the laws of nature. Jesus' authority is personal. Thomas is saying, Jesus, you are my personal master. What you prioritize, I will prioritize. Your thoughts determine my opinions. You call my shots. Even the devil knows that Jesus is God, but he refuses to live with him as Lord. Thomas's declaration calls us to submit to Jesus as both God and Lord, the one with authority over every aspect of our lives. As each of us ponders Jesus' claim to be the Lord of our lives, there are probably areas we might be tempted to want to hold back from him. Maybe it's our career or our reputation. Is it a particular friendship that puts us at odds with God? Is it our desire for the kind of security we think our wealth provides? When I say wealth, I don't mean massive affluence. I just mean the comforts provided by our regular incomes. What if Jesus wanted us to live differently, more simply, to change our lifestyle? Are there ambitions and hopes that we hold which we would rather shelter from Jesus' authority, to keep a little something back? Jesus is Lord means Lord of all, every part of our lives. We all know, don't we, that words are cheap. Have you ever wondered what happened to Thomas? At the end of the day, was his belief in Jesus as Lord and God genuine, or did his actions make a mockery of his words? Well, the New Testament records that Thomas remained active with the other apostles for the early part of the book of Acts. But after that, there's no mention of him. What did he do then? Well, some documents of the early church tell us that Thomas left Jerusalem for the east, likely travelling as far as India. There's reason to think that all along the west coast of India, Thomas continued to testify to Jesus and established a small but robust Christian church there. But opposition arose and eventually Thomas was martyred for his faith. And so we do know that Thomas's belief was genuine because his actions showed us. With Thomas's words and his actions before us, we are greatly encouraged. Jesus' resurrection was life-changing for him, and so may it be for each of us. As Jesus said to Thomas, "Because you have seen me, you have believed. Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed."